A YouTuber's hands trembled as he stared at his sonar screen. The digital image was unmistakable. A car, perfectly preserved, 13 feet beneath the surface of a Tennessee river. But this wasn't just any car. This was a tomb. Inside that vehicle were two teenagers who had been missing for 21 years. Erin Foster, 18, Jeremy Bechtel, 17. One spring night in 2000, they drove away from a house in Sparta, Tennessee, and disappeared without a trace. No witnesses, no clues, nothing. Their families spent 2 decades trapped in a nightmare, searching for answers that seemed impossible to find. Police chased dead ends. Rumors tore the community apart. The case went cold. But the truth, it was right there all along, buried in the first page of the case file, a document that nobody bothered to read for 18 years. This is the story of how one sheriff, one overlooked piece of paper, and one YouTuber with scuba gear finally solved the unsolvable. Before we go any further, drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it where you are? Subscribe, like, and share this video to support my channel. This means a lot to me. Sparta, Tennessee. Population barely 5,000. The kind of town where everyone knows everyone, where Friday night football games are the highlight of the week, and where secrets don't stay hidden for long. It's a place where kids grow up together, graduate together, and build lives rooted in familiarity and trust. Erin Foster was one of those kids. At 18, she was a senior at White County High School. A perfectionist, an overachiever, soft-spoken but deeply loved by those who knew her. She worked at Miss Miranda's tea room, saving money and planning for a future that stretched out ahead of her with endless possibility. Her family, her parents Cecil and Lee, and her younger brother Will were everything to her. She wasn't the type to cause trouble or take unnecessary risks. She was responsible, steady. Jeremy Bechtel, 17, was the opposite in all the right ways. Athletic, funny, full of life. He had that easy charm that made him popular at school, the kind of guy who could light up a room just by walking into it. He and Erin weren't dating, they were best friends, the kind of friendship built on years of shared memories and late-night conversations. They trusted each other completely. April 3rd, 2000 started like any other Monday. Erin and Jeremy went to school, hung out with friends, made plans for the evening. That night, they attended a party with other local teenagers. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous, just kids being kids. Around 10 p.m., they left the party and drove to Erin's house in her black 1988 Pontiac Grand Am. Erin went inside and spoke with her mother, asking if she could stay out a little later than usual. Her mom said yes. Erin smiled, said goodbye, and walked back to the car where Jeremy was waiting. They pulled out of the driveway. The taillights faded into the darkness, and they were never seen again. When Erin didn't come home that night, her parents knew something was wrong. Erin wasn't the type to ignore curfew or disappear without calling. Panic set in quickly. Calls were made. Friends were questioned. A missing persons report was filed. By morning, the entire town of Sparta was searching. Volunteers combed the woods. Police knocked on doors. The local media spread the word. But there was nothing. No crashed car, no signs of a struggle, no witnesses who saw anything unusual. It was as if Erin Foster and Jeremy Bechtel had simply vanished into thin air. The question haunted everyone. Where did they go? But what happened next would haunt two families for over 2 decades. Cecil Foster was working out of town in Ohio when his daughter disappeared. He got the call every parent dreads, rushed home, and walked into what he would later describe as a total nightmare. But nightmares end when you wake up. This one never did. For 21 years, the Foster and Bechtel families lived in a state of suspended agony. Not knowing is its own special kind of torture. Are they alive? Are they hurt? Are they being held somewhere against their will? Did they run away? Were they taken? Every knock on the door could be the news they'd been waiting for. Every phone call could be the one that changed everything. Hope became a cruel companion, present just enough to keep them going, but never delivering the answers they desperately needed. The community rallied around them. Vigils were held. Search parties scoured the countryside. Flyers with Erin and Jeremy's faces were posted on every telephone pole and storefront window in White County. For months, the town refused to let the story die, But as weeks turned into months and months turned into years, the searches grew smaller, the leads dried up, life moved forward for everyone except the families left behind. Then came the false hope, the kind that rips your heart out all over again. In 2005, a rumor surfaced that Erin had been spotted in Pensacola, Florida. Someone claimed to have seen a young woman who matched her description. The lead seemed credible enough that searches were organized. The family allowed themselves to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was it. Maybe Erin had run away. Maybe she was alive and living under a different name. The searches in 2005 turned up nothing, but the rumor persisted. In 2006, they tried again. Different locations, different tips. Same crushing result, nothing. Each false lead was a gut punch. Each dead end reopened the wound. The cycle repeated itself over and over. Hope, followed by devastation, followed by the agonizing return to not knowing. For Jeremy's mother, the not knowing became unbearable. She spent years wondering what had happened to her son, clinging to the possibility that he might walk through the door one day. She never got that closure. She died before Jeremy was ever found, never knowing the truth about the night he disappeared. That's the cruelest part of a cold case. It's not just the absence of answers. It's the presence of endless, torturous questions. It's watching the world move on while you remain frozen in the worst moment of your life. It's the birthdays that pass without celebration, the holidays that feel hollow, the graduations, weddings, and milestones that will never happen. It's grief without permission to grieve. But here's the thing that makes this case even more tragic. What if I told you the answer was in the case file from day one? That's not an exaggeration. The very first document filed in this case, the missing persons report signed by Erin's family, contained the critical piece of information that could have solved this mystery within days, maybe even hours. But nobody read it. Not carefully anyway. Here's where everything went wrong. When investigators started piecing together Erin and Jeremy's final movements, they made a fatal assumption. They believed the teenagers had left the party and were heading toward Erin's house when they disappeared. It made sense on the surface. Teens leave a party, drive home. Something happens along the way. Logical, right? Based on that theory, search teams focused their efforts on the west end of White County, combing the roads and areas between the party location and the foster home. Volunteers walked those routes for weeks. Dive teams searched bodies of water in that area. Investigators knocked on doors, interviewed witnesses, and followed up on tips, all centered around the belief that Erin and Jeremy never made it home. But they did make it home. The missing persons report, the one filed on day one, clearly stated that Erin and Jeremy had already been to the foster residence. Erin had gone inside, talked to her mother, asked to stay out a bit later, and then left with Jeremy. They were driving away from the house, not toward it. That meant their most likely route was east, along Highway 84. That single document sat in the case file for 18 years. Sheriffs came and went. Investigators handed off the case. New eyes looked at the evidence, but somehow that foundational piece of paper was overlooked again and again. The search remained focused on the wrong part of the county, while the real answer lay submerged just feet from a road people drove every single day. But the mistakes didn't stop there. Over the years, dive teams did eventually consider the possibility that the car had gone into the water. The Calf Killer River runs alongside Highway 84, and it's deep in places, a dark, winding waterway that could easily swallow a vehicle. But when divers assessed the area, they noticed a guardrail lining that stretch of road. They reasoned that if a car had crashed through and plunged into the river, there would be visible damage to the guardrail. No damage meant no crash. Case closed. Move on. Except there was one massive problem. That guardrail wasn't there in 2000. In April of that year, that section of Highway 84 was a dark, rural road with no barrier, just a sheer drop-off into the river below. One wrong turn, one moment of distraction, and a car could go straight into the water without leaving a trace. But because no one bothered to verify what the road looked like 2 decades earlier, that location was effectively ruled out. 2 mistakes. One incorrect assumption about where the teens were headed. One false belief about a guardrail that didn't exist. Together, they created a perfect storm of misdirection that buried the truth for 21 years. Has your community ever dealt with a case like this, where crucial details were missed or overlooked. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your stories. It would take a fresh pair of eyes and some very modern technology to finally crack this case wide open. Enter Jeremy Bo Sides, a military veteran, experienced scuba diver, and the man behind a YouTube channel called Exploring with Nug. Sides wasn't your typical YouTuber chasing views and viral moments. His channel had a purpose, using sonar technology and diving expertise to search for missing vehicles connected to cold cases. He'd scan rivers, lakes, and reservoirs, documenting his searches for tens of thousands of subscribers who followed along, hoping for breakthroughs. Some searches came up empty, but others, they brought families the answers they'd been praying for. In 2021, the Erin Foster and Jeremy Bechtel case caught his attention. But before Sides ever got involved, something crucial happened back in Sparta. In 2018, Steve Page was elected as the new White County Sheriff. Unlike his predecessors, Page wasn't content to let the case gather dust. He made a decision that would change everything. He was going to review the case from the very beginning. Every document, every report, every piece of evidence. That's when he found it. The Missing Persons Report. Page 1. Filed on day 1. Right there in black and white, it stated that Erin and Jeremy had already been to the foster home before they disappeared. They weren't driving toward the house. They were leaving from it. Page's mind raced. If they left the foster home, their route would have taken them east along Highway 84, not west, where every search had been focused for 2 decades. East, toward the Calf Killer River. The theory shifted. The search area shifted. And Sheriff Page knew he needed help. He reached out to Jeremy Sides. The 2 men connected, and Page shared his new theory. Sides agreed to bring his sonar equipment to Sparta and scan the section of the Calf Killer River that ran alongside Highway 84. If the car went into that water, his technology would find it. On November 30th, 2021, Sides arrived at the river. He launched his equipment and began methodically scanning the riverbed, watching the sonar screen as it painted a digital map of what lay beneath the surface. The water was deep, cold, and dark, 13 feet in some spots, with thick layers of silt and algae that had built up over decades. Hours passed. The sonar swept back and forth. Then, on his screen, he saw it. A shape. Unmistakable. A car. His pulse quickened. The object was sitting upright on the riverbed, 13 feet below the surface, almost perfectly intact. But daylight was fading fast. Visibility underwater would be nearly impossible in the dark, and a dive of this magnitude required preparation. Sides made the call. He'd come back in the morning. That night must have felt endless. December 1st, 2021. Sides returned to the river, suited up in his dive gear, and descended into the murky water. The conditions were brutal, near zero visibility, thick clouds of algae swirling with every movement, sediment that had settled over 2 decades, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few inches ahead. But he pushed forward, feeling his way through the darkness. His hands touched metal. The vehicle. He worked carefully, brushing away layers of mud and debris that clung to the car like a second skin. He moved toward the rear, knowing that's where he'd find what he was looking for. The license plate. He cleared the silt, wiped away the grime, and there it was, still legible after 21 years underwater. It was a match. Sides surfaced immediately and contacted Sheriff Page. Within hours, recovery teams were on site. The confirmation was official. They had found Erin Foster's 1988 Pontiac Grand Am. After 7,771 days of silence, Erin and Jeremy were finally coming home. The recovery operation began immediately. Specialized equipment was brought in, and crews worked meticulously to pull the vehicle from the river. After more than 2 decades submerged in cold, dark water, the 1988 Pontiac Grand Am was finally brought to the surface. Inside, investigators found human remains. Forensic analysis was conducted using DNA samples and dental records. The results confirmed what everyone already knew in their hearts. The remains belonged to Erin Foster and Jeremy Bechtel. The official conclusion: a tragic accident, no foul play, no kidnapping, no mystery villain, just 2 teenagers on a dark, rural stretch of Highway 84, where one moment of lost control sent them over the edge. In April 2000, that section of road had no guardrail, no barrier, no warning signs, just a sheer drop into the Calfkiller River below. Whether it was a moment of distraction, a sharp turn misjudged in the darkness, or something as simple as swerving to avoid an animal, no one will ever know for certain. What is certain is that the car left the road, plunged into the water, and sank 13 feet to the bottom. They likely died on impact or within moments. There was no time to call for help, no chance to escape. Just a split second that ended 2 young lives and set off a 21-year search for answers. For Cecil Foster, the news brought a wave of emotions that didn't quite fit into words. He described feeling numb, not relieved, not devastated, but somewhere in between. After spending more than 2 decades trapped in the agony of not knowing, the truth felt almost surreal. His daughter was gone. She'd been gone the entire time, but now, at least, he knew. In 2022, the families were finally able to do what they'd been denied for 21 years, lay their children to rest. Jeremy Bechtel was buried. Erin Foster was cremated. The services were filled with tears, memories, and the bittersweet comfort of closure. But closure doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't bring back the years stolen by uncertainty. It doesn't undo the damage caused by investigative failures and missed opportunities. Jeremy's mother never got to say goodbye. 2 families spent decades living in a nightmare that could have been ended in days if someone had just read the first page of the case file. The truth was always there, 13 feet below the surface, right where it had been since April 3rd, 2000. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss a case like this, because there are still so many families out there waiting for answers. And share this video. Someone out there might have a cold case that needs attention, and your share could be the thing that brings a family home. The resolution of the Erin Foster and Jeremy Bechtel case isn't just a story about closure. It's a lesson in what happens when we refuse to accept unsolvable. Lesson 1. Always go back to the beginning. Sheriff Steve Page didn't assume the previous investigators had done everything right. He started from page 1. Literally, and that's where he found the key that unlocked everything. Cold cases don't stay cold because there's no evidence. They stay cold because the evidence gets buried under years of assumptions, theories, and investigative tunnel vision. Sometimes the answer is right there in the first document, waiting for someone to actually read it. Lesson 2. Challenge every assumption. The guardrail mistake cost this case nearly 2 decades. Investigators saw the guardrail in 2018 and assumed it had been there in 2000. They never verified. They never questioned. One unchecked assumption kept Erin and Jeremy hidden for years. The lesson? Never assume the scene today looks the same as it did back then. Verify. Always verify. Lesson 3. Collaboration saves lives and solves cases. Sheriff Page didn't have the equipment or expertise to search that river. Jeremy Sides had the technology, but not the authority or investigative insight. Together, they accomplished what neither could have done alone. This case is proof that law enforcement and civilian investigators can work side by side to bring answers to families who've waited far too long. We're living in a new era. YouTubers with sonar equipment, podcasters who dig into forgotten files, citizen sleuths who dedicate their free time to cases the system left behind. Modern technology is turning everyday people into powerful tools for justice. And that raises a massive question. How many other cases could be solved this way? How many other families are out there still waiting, still wondering, when the answer might be just one scan, one dive, one fresh perspective away? This case gives hope. Not just to the Foster and Bechtel families, but to every family still living in that nightmare of not knowing. So here's my question for you. What case do you think needs this kind of attention? Drop it in the comments. You never know who might be watching, because sometimes the truth isn't hidden at all. It's just 13 feet below the surface, waiting for someone to look in the right place. Subscribe and turn the notification bell for more captivating cold cases.